Atlanta was buzzing in a way that only Atlanta could. Not with music, not with parties, not with the usual rhythm of nightlife, but with whispers that started in the dim corners of Instagram comments and spread like wildfire to TikTok reenactments and Twitter threads that never seemed to end. And at the heart of it all was one picture, one caption, one performance that stopped the city cold. Tamar Braxton, lying in a hospital bed, her face half hidden under bandages, her caption dripping with tragedy, "I almost died. Found in a pool of blood. My nose is fractured. My teeth are missing." Those words weren't just an update, they were a declaration, a weapon. 4 teeth, gone. A broken nose. A body battered. For hours the city clutched its chest. Fans flooded her comments with emojis of prayer hands, candles, hearts, begging God to keep her safe. Blogs scrambled to report. YouTubers rushed to upload breaking updates. Tamar had captured sympathy in one post, and the world paused for her, but Atlanta doesn't pause for long. Even while the candles and prayers filled her page, doubt slipped in like smoke through a cracked door. Because Atlanta knows the difference between tragedy and theatrics, and it didn't take long before people began asking questions that Tamar's photo couldn't answer. Who was with her that night? Who saw her before the bandages? Who walked her into that hospital? The whispers grew teeth, and the first name caught in their bite was Funky Dineva. Hours before Tamar's dramatic reveal, he had been right beside her, smiling over dinner, raising glasses at Ruth's Chris, stepping into V12 Lounge under neon lights. There were photos, videos, stories confirming it. And suddenly the narrative twisted. Tamar was no longer just a victim. Funky Dineva was painted as a villain. Imagine it, going to bed after celebrating your birthday, posting laughs with friends, only to wake up with your name dragged through hashtags like you were a predator. Funky Dineva opened his phone and saw his comments drowning in accusation. "You were the last one with her. What did you do to Tamar? Explain yourself." The same followers who once laughed with his shade were now pressing him like prosecutors. At first, Funky did what Funky always did, he leaned on humor. Shade had been his shield for years, his survival tactic when storms hit. But this wasn't just gossip. This wasn't petty back and forth. This was different. Because when a woman says she woke up bloody, broken, teeth missing, and you were the last one seen with her, that isn't a rumor, that's a scar, a brand that could ruin forever. By the time Funky Dineva hit that live button, more than 7,000 people were already waiting. Not fans. Not cheerleaders. Judges, jurors, executioners in comment form. And he had to defend his name. He told the story plain: Ruth's Chris, V12 Lounge, food, drinks, laughter, then dropping Tamar home safely. Nothing unusual. No fight. No harm. No blood. Just a night of celebration. But what stood out wasn't what he said, it was what she didn't. Because Tamar never came forward to clear him. Not once did she post a line saying, "My friend had nothing to do with this." Her silence, deliberate and sharp, did the speaking. And in that silence, Funky Dineva burned, and Tamar didn't just let him burn quietly. She turned silence into performance. She dropped cryptic captions, "I can't wait to tell y'all." She dangled her mystery like bait on a hook. Fans thought she was building toward justice, toward exposing the person who hurt her. But when the reveal came, it wasn't an abuser. It wasn't closure. It wasn't even clarity. It was a rollout. A polished EP. A music video. A dramatic rebrand. And standing beside her in those glossy visuals was Mendeecees Harris. That was the moment the city gasped. Sympathy turned bitter in an instant. Tamar, who just days earlier said she had almost died, was suddenly posing and smiling with a man whose name was already dripping with scandal. Mendeecees Harris, whose marriage to Yandy Smith was already shaky with cheating rumors, became her co-star. Why him? Why then? The answer was written in neon. Controversy sells. Tamar had turned pain into promo, blood into branding. For Funky Dineva, this was betrayal at its rawest. He had been patient, waiting for her to speak, waiting for loyalty, to win over theatrics. But the rollout proved the opposite. He wasn't her friend. He was her scapegoat. On his second live, his words weren't coated in humor. They were daggers. "I was collateral damage in a 2-bit PR stunt," he said. And this time, he didn't come empty-handed. He came with receipts. Screenshots of texts Tamar sent during her supposed hospital stay. Not words of pain. Not panic. Not trauma. But playful, casual messages like someone narrating a scene instead of surviving one. "Friend, oh my God," she typed, almost like she was writing dialogue. Funky held up his phone and asked the question bluntly, "If you were me, what would you think? Who jokes like that if they're bleeding out?" The betrayal wasn't just about her words. It was about her choices. Friendship means protection. Friendship means standing in the line of fire. But Tamar didn't shield Funky. She offered him up to the wolves. And to choose Mendeecees Harris, of all people, sharpened the sting. She could have picked anyone to star in her project. She chose a man already accused of stepping out on his wife. She chose a man gossip blogs had painted as unfaithful. Tamar knew exactly the headlines it would spark, and she wanted them. She didn't care who burned as long as her name lit up, and when old Braxton family clips resurfaced, Tony Braxton's haunting words, "We spoiled her. We let her get away with everything. We created a monster," it hit like prophecy. Tamar wasn't stumbling into chaos. She was choreographing it. That was the tragedy of it all. Because Tamar didn't need this circus. Her voice alone could silence arenas. Her talent was enough to make the world pause without theatrics. But she didn't lead with her gift. She led with manipulation. She let bandages and broken bones take the stage instead of her music. Atlanta split in half. On one side were her loyal fans, convinced she was misunderstood, desperate to protect her from the cruelty of the world. But on the other side was exhaustion, frustration, disgust. How many times could one woman cry wolf before people stopped running? This time, the wolf cries didn't echo through the city. They ricocheted, bouncing back and shattering Tamar's own credibility. By the time Funky Dineva hit live again, the patience was gone. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't shading. He was cutting. "This woman was supposed to be my friend," he said, his voice heavy, his eyes sharper than ever. "And she sat back and let me be eaten alive while she smiled for a rollout. What kind of person does that?" The comments lit up instantly. Selfish. Narcissist. Desperate. The sympathy that once wrapped around Tamar was now ripped away. And Funky, once accused, was now vindicated by betrayal itself. Tamar tried her old playbook. Pastel backgrounds, captions about peace, growth, healing. Pretty words meant to calm the fire. But this time the audience didn't buy it. Healing doesn't mean silence when your friend is being destroyed. Peace doesn't mean hiding behind God while the truth rots. Growth doesn't mean lying with bandages. Even her sugar-coated words, "No matter what he says, I love Miss Funky Dineva," landed flat. Funky clapped back without hesitation. "Love me? You don't love me. You used me." And there it was. The truth in plain view. Love, loyalty, friendship, all props in Tamar's performance. She had used them, twisted them, staged them, and Atlanta saw it. The blogs saw it. Funky saw it. What began as sympathy for a broken woman in a hospital bed had now flipped into the story of a performer exposed, a performance collapsing under its own weight. The storm that began with whispers in comment sections had grown into a full-blown cultural trial, and Tamar Braxton was no longer the patient lying in a hospital bed. She was the defendant in the court of public opinion. What once looked like pain now looked like performance, and the very silence she thought would shield her became the knife slicing through her credibility. The city of Atlanta no longer asked who hurt Tamar, it asked who Tamar had chosen to hurt. In order to get ahead. And at the top of that list was Funky Dineva, her so-called friend who had been forced to defend his name while she watched in silence. Funky's lives shifted tone with each passing day. What started as confusion became frustration, and what became frustration soon turned into sharpened rage. He no longer sounded like a man caught in the middle of a misunderstanding. He sounded like a man betrayed, a man whose loyalty had been used like stage lighting in someone else's production. He laid out the timeline for the audience like an attorney, the birthday dinner at Ruth's Chris, the laughter at V12 Lounge, dropping Tamar home without incident, and then waking up to accusations that he had done something unspeakable. He replayed her hospital post for his viewers, word for word, and asked the question that had already begun haunting the culture: if she could sit in silence while y'all dragged me, then tell me, what kind of friend is that? The comments filled with one-word verdicts: guilty, user, manipulator. Meanwhile, Tamar thought she could drown the fire with soft captions and spiritual words. She wrapped herself in pastel-colored posts about peace and growth, talking about light, healing, and choosing love. But the people weren't fooled. Not this time. Fans ripped through her comments with claws sharper than before. Where was this peace when Funky was getting destroyed? Healing doesn't mean faking pain. You're hiding behind God instead of telling the truth. For years Tamar had leaned on this playbook, the vague quotes, the polished graphics, the victimhood aesthetic, but now it wasn't a shield. It was a mirror, reflecting hypocrisy back at her, and then came the reveal that made everything worse: her EP rollout, her music video, her comeback project, starring Mendeecees Harris. The man whose marriage to Yandy Smith was already breaking under the weight of rumors. The man gossip blogs had tagged as unfaithful, reckless, and scandalous. Tamar didn't just work with him, she unveiled him at the exact moment the culture was questioning her credibility. The optics were nuclear. Just days after saying she nearly died, Tamar re-emerged not with an apology or an explanation but with a married man who carried his own scandal like a badge. For Yandy, this was humiliation she never asked for. Her page, once filled with posts about business ventures, family, and positivity, became a battlefield overnight. Why is Tamar standing next to your husband? Are you okay with this? How can you keep defending him? Every picture, every caption, even ones unrelated to the storm, was dissected for hidden meaning. Some fans begged her to leave. Others mocked her for staying. But the truth was clear. Tamar had dragged Yandy into a performance she never signed up for. Mendeecees Harris, for his part, stayed silent. But silence in scandal is never neutral. His refusal to speak looked less like dignity and more like complicity. Did he know Tamar was planning this rollout? Did he agree to be part of her storm? Was he simply another pawn, or was he a willing co-star in the chaos? Each unanswered question multiplied, and the lack of response became an answer of its own. The speculation wasn't just about Tamar anymore. It was about whether Mendeecees had chosen to stand beside her willingly, even if it meant dragging his wife into public humiliation. For Funky Dineva, this was the final nail. His anger didn't need convincing anymore, the evidence was in plain sight. Everything he had claimed during his fiery live sessions now looked undeniable. The hospital bed picture, the silence, the cryptic captions, the sudden rollout with Mendeecees, it all aligned like puzzle pieces. Funky didn't even have to fight for credibility anymore. The rollout itself proved him right. He had gone from being the accused to becoming the accuser, and Atlanta was starting to look at Tamar not as the victim, but as the manipulator who orchestrated the entire storm. Of bloggers who once defended Tamar flipped overnight. YouTube channels uploaded exposés stitching her hospital photo beside her music teaser, mocking the hypocrisy. TikTokers filmed parodies of her lying in a hospital bed with exaggerated bandages, treating the entire story as bad acting. Even Instagram meme pages began labeling her comeback as a circus. The sympathy that had once fueled her engagement now fueled ridicule. And in the middle of it all, clips of Tamar Braxton resurfaced like ghosts, her words cutting sharper than ever. We spoiled her. We let her get away with everything. We created a monster. Once brushed off as sibling shade, those words now rang like prophecy fulfilled. Tamar wasn't a tragic figure fighting to survive. She was the architect of her own chaos. What made it worse was how unnecessary it all was. Tamar's voice had the power to fill arenas. Her talent was undeniable. She could have dropped a project without theatrics and still had the world listening. But instead, she chose to lead with manipulation. She chose to wrap her music in bandages and betrayal, using a hospital photo as the hook. She chose to sacrifice her friend's reputation and another woman's marriage for attention. That was the real wound the culture couldn't forgive, the collateral damage, because Tamar's stunt didn't just hurt her. It scorched everyone around her. Funky Dineva was dragged through the mud for days, his character questioned in front of thousands. Yandy Smith was thrown into the fire of public humiliation, her marriage dissected by strangers. Mendeecees Harris had his reputation cemented as complicit in a staged scandal. Even the Braxton family, who had once warned the world of Tamar's habits, were pulled back into the spotlight, their old comments replayed as proof that they had seen the monster long before anyone else did. Tamar had built her comeback not on her own story, but on the backs of people who trusted her, and that betrayal hit harder than any staged photo could. The audience began asking deeper questions. If Tamar could fake tragedy for clout, what else had she faked? How many other storylines had been bent into performances? How many tears had been staged? How many friendships had been sacrificed for a headline? Suddenly her entire history was under review, with fans combing through old interviews, old arguments, old conflicts, looking for signs of performance over reality. What once felt like dramatic truth now felt like strategic manipulation. By now, Funky Dineva's live streams had transformed into something bigger than self-defense. He wasn't just protecting his name anymore, he was prosecuting Tamar's. He walked his viewers through the timeline like a case file. The dinner, the lounge, the hospital picture, the silence, the cryptic teasers, the EP reveal with Mendeecees. Piece by piece, he connected every dot until the conclusion was unavoidable. This wasn't survival, he declared, his voice sharp enough to cut through the screen. This was performance. And in the comments, thousands echoed him. We believe you. She's exposed. She used you. The shift was complete. Tamar wasn't just losing sympathy, she was losing trust. And in entertainment, trust is worth more than talent. Because applause comes with a song, but credibility is what keeps the audience listening. And credibility, once broken, doesn't glue itself back together. Yet Tamar refused to address it head-on. She doubled down on her cycle. More captions about peace. More pastel backgrounds. more talk of love and light. But the words, once soft shields, now felt like excuses. Every new post only fueled the fire. Her followers no longer saw spirituality, they saw calculation. They no longer saw wisdom, they saw avoidance. Each quote about growth was drowned in comments calling her a liar, a manipulator, a woman hiding behind God instead of telling the truth. What she had once used to protect herself had now turned into weapons against her, her own words ricocheting back at her like bullets. The fallout spread like a virus, infecting everything it touched. Reaction videos mocked her rollout. Streams for her EP flatlined. Twitter turned her hospital story into memes. TikTok stitched her image with parody acting. And the culture that once rushed to defend her now pulled up chairs and popcorn to watch her downfall. What should have been a rebirth had turned into a burial, not of her talent, but of her credibility, and still, the question lingered heavier than all the rest. If Tamar Braxton could stage one performance of pain for clout, what else had she staged before? How many other moments were not truth, but theater? And how many more people would she sacrifice before she finally stood alone? By the time the third week of chaos rolled through Atlanta, the city no longer sounded like gossip, it sounded like judgment. Tamar Braxton had gone from victim to manipulator, from sympathy's darling to credibility's cautionary tale. Her hospital bed post was no longer replayed as evidence of tragedy but dissected as proof of performance. The same followers who once cried for her healing now sat in comment sections like jurors, weighing every caption, every silence, every picture, and deciding if her career had finally run out of second chances. Funky Dineva, who days earlier was fighting to clear his name, had now fully stepped into the role of prosecutor. His final live didn't feel like a rant anymore. It felt like testimony. He looked into the camera, his face heavy with the exhaustion of betrayal, and walked his viewers through the story one last time. The dinner at Ruth's Chris. The laughter at V12 Lounge. Dropping Tamar home. The hospital bed photo. The silence while he burned alive. The cryptic captions that dangled drama like bait. And finally, the glossy rollout with Mendeecees Harris. Piece by piece, he laid it out until the comments were filled with unanimous agreement. We see it now. She used you. This was never about survival. And then he delivered the line that hit like a gavel. This wasn't survival. This was performance. The words rang across timelines, screenshotted and reposted, turned into hashtags and memes. And in that moment, the cultural tide was sealed. Funky Dineva wasn't the villain anymore. He was the truth teller. The one who had endured betrayal only to come out holding the receipts. Tamar, instead of defending him, had sacrificed him. And now the world saw it. Meanwhile, Tamar clung tighter to the same tired tactics. Pastel-colored backgrounds. Hashtags. About peace, light, growth. Carefully curated posts that tried to paint her as a woman rising above negativity. But every post landed like a slap in the face to the audience that had once defended her. Healing doesn't mean lying. Peace doesn't mean silence when your friend is bleeding. Growth doesn't mean faking blood. What she had once used as a shield had turned into daggers against her. Every caption became evidence. Every pastel post became proof. She wasn't healing, she was hiding. She wasn't choosing peace, she was avoiding accountability, and the fallout spread beyond her control. Mendeecees Harris, once just the subject of cheating rumors, now carried a reputation as Tamar's co-star in a scandal staged at the expense of others. His silence, his refusal to speak, looked like consent. It looked like complicity. Whether he had known or not no longer mattered, the culture decided he was guilty by association. Yandy Smith, dragged into the storm without choice, became collateral damage. Her page filled with questions she never asked for, her marriage dissected in real time by strangers, her dignity turned into a storyline she never agreed to. Tamar's choices had scorched not just her own name, but the names of people around her. Even the Braxton family couldn't escape the storm. Old clips of Toni Braxton resurfaced again and again, her voice crisp and cutting. We created a monster. Those words, once brushed off as sibling banter, now echoed like prophecy. Tamar wasn't unlucky. She wasn't cursed. She wasn't misunderstood. She was orchestrating chaos, and her family had seen it long before the world did. The blogs turned. YouTube reaction videos stopped promoting her music and instead mocked her rollout. TikTok creators stitched her hospital post with clips of her music teaser, parodying it as bad acting. Twitter, once filled with prayers, now mocked her daily with memes. Streams that should have risen with her project flatlined, overshadowed by the circus she had created. And one viral comment summed it up best: she wanted us to buy her album, but we're just buying popcorn. But the most haunting part of it all was not the collapse of her project. It was the questions left behind. If Tamar could fake near death for attention, what else had she faked? How many other tears were staged? How many other friendships were sacrificed? How many other allies had she burned for clout? Suddenly her entire history was under suspicion, her every past storyline re-examined for signs of performance over truth. For Funky Dineva, vindication was bittersweet. He had cleared his name, but the cost was heavy. He had lost a friend, been dragged publicly, and been forced to defend himself against accusations that could have destroyed him. His final words carried the weight of betrayal that couldn't be undone. Since you had no problem letting me burn, I'm going to let the truth burn. And when I'm done, there won't be anything left to hide behind. His audience erupted with support. He had gone from mocked to believed, from accused to vindicated, and the city stood behind him. And Tamar? She doubled down, as always. More pastel posts. More captions about choosing love. More quotes about healing. But the audience no longer listened. They no longer believed. Her voice, once capable of silencing arenas, now rang hollow. Her talent was still there, but without credibility, it didn't matter. Because applause may come with a song, but credibility is what keeps it alive. And credibility, once shattered, rarely rebuilds. By the end of the month, Atlanta no longer whispered about Tamar Braxton. It spoke with certainty. She had built her comeback on blood and betrayal, and in doing so, she had destroyed the very foundation of trust that kept her career alive. She still had her gift, but the world no longer trusted her story. And without trust, even the loudest voice begins to sound like noise. So the curtain didn't fall with triumph, or healing, or clarity. It fell with doubt. A city that once prayed for her survival now asked a harsher question: was this the moment Tamar Braxton's reputation finally ran out of second chances?